Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where I want to talk about what is possibly the last great Beach Boys album. And don't get me wrong, I've always opposed the people who say, oh, the Beach Boys stuff in the 70s is all bad. They were all bad after the 60s. There were some great albums. The Holland album was very good. The Light album, LA, was very good. But the best album that the Beach Boys did in the 70s, and one of their lost true masterpieces, was 1971 Surf's Up. And in some ways, it's more accessible than Pet Sounds, certainly more accessible than Smiley Smile. And the reason is because it was a comparatively short album in terms of the number of songs. They didn't tend to cram so much in, like frankly, Pet Sounds did, in my view. But there were some really good ones. Check out the song Feel Flows. Try to say it three times fast. You can't, but it's a wonderful song that Carl Wilson was the principal writer on that really, really captured Carl at his best. And I think it's one of the best Beach Boys songs of all time. And then, of course, there's the classic Surf's Up, co-written by Van Dyke Parks and Brian Wilson. But there were many songs that really could have been big hits, and in some ways were. Disney Girls was Brian Johnston's song, which was relatively popular. A Day in the Life of a Tree, quite interesting there. The whole album, though, was just, again, really well produced, really well performed. The Beach Boys harmonies were as good as ever. And it was something that sort of stood between the sort of darker places that Brian Wilson had already sort of ventured into, particularly with the Smile sessions in the late 60s, and the earlier Beach Boys music, which was all about fun, 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 till the daddy takes the T-Bird, surfboard, Little Deuce Coupe, Honda, and all of the other fun things the Beach Boys were singing about away in the early 60s. And so, in many ways, this album was both within the experimental spirit of Pet Sounds and Smile, but it was also, in some ways, harkening back to the lighter, happier, brighter Beach Boys of their early days when they became known to the world for popularizing the imagined and, in some ways, real California lifestyle of that day. Surf's Up, you could argue, if one had to pick the best Beach Boys song, many would pick Good Vibrations, many would pick God Only Knows. Some would say, right, we've got to be more authentic, we've got to go with Surfing USA. But I would make an argument that Surf's Up, and not just because it's got the word surf in the title, which you kind of have to if you're talking about a best Beach Boys song, but something about how within a relatively short song, it's under 5 minutes in length, yet it has so many interesting changes, so many interesting musical, thematic, and lyrical developments that it really does show that Brian Wilson, even when he was supposedly past his peak, he was still capable of writing, these three, or in this case, 4 minute symphonies. And I think that a lot has to be said about that. It was just before things started to gradually fall apart, and we all know the drama of the Beach Boys. But in spite of that, there is always a Beach Boys. Whether Brian Wilson is willing to appear on stage or not throughout this era, the Beach Boys continued to perform in the 70s, releasing multiple compilation albums in multiple parts of the world, all of which sold very well, which is a testament to the great writing, the wonderful harmonies, the great production. So if you're more into the early stuff, or if the sort of beginning and the end for your Beach Boys explorations is Pet Sounds or the Smiley Smile era, check out Surf's Up from 1971. A really good album front to back. You don't want to miss out on that. One of their masterpieces, arguably their last truly amazing album. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Take care.